Hi, everybody, and welcome to Unnamed Show. I'm sure there was a graph at the beginning of this that did say the name, but we don't know it at the time of the recording. So welcome. Down below me is a awesome dude who I've known for a really long time and has worked in the Hollywood as a producer. His name is Justin Luteran. He's a guest writer on Thoughts from the Bench from time to time, and really a great just knowledge base on everything movies. The man to my whatever this is, I guess left, Austin Moorhead, the rank king. And Austin, you are here because I believe, and I truly believe this, you have consumed more media than any one man on the entire bench.
It's a very, yeah, I would say so. It's a very accurate statement, to say the least. I follow all things movies, music, you name it.
Yeah. And my background is that I did study film in college and have been a video producer, editor since 2012. So we kind of have this awesome brain trust in the ideas. We're going to break down some movies for you. And if you like it, let us know. We'll keep doing it. But if it sucks, we're just going to do it through the quarantine. And yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah. What else is there? You know,
nothing
no
at this point.
Yeah.
The movie that was selected was Austin's pick, which is 2003's Mystic River, directed by my man Clint Eastwood, starring Sean Penn, Kevin Bacon, and Tim Robbins. A story of three young men who go through a life-changing affirmation kind of scenario when Tim's character, Dave, gets abducted by two child molesters. All three friends go their separate ways. We catch up with them as adults. We find out that one of them is a cop, one of them is a mobster, and one of them is basically a low-life bum. Dave, who was the child that was molested, being the low-life bum. Jimmy, being the gangster, that is Sean Penn's character, and Kevin Bacon's character, Sean, is now with the Boston Police Department.
Yep.
That's kind of the general idea. Boys, what did you like about this movie? Did you even like this movie? It was an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. Clint was nominated for Best Director. Sean Penn won for Best Actor. Tim Robbins won for Best Supporting Actor. So, I mean, the movie got some awards. Did you like it?
It did. Yeah, I have to jump in and first say how this came to me here through Josh yesterday, because Austin, I don't know if you had this happen, but this was hilarious. So Josh reached out to me yesterday. He says, "Have you ever seen Mystic River?" And I say, "No, it's always been on my list, but I have never gone around to it." And he hits me back with, "It's basically like a crappy Departed." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" So like I look it up and I'm like, wait a sec, this movie was nominated for a bunch of Oscars. Clint Eastwood directed it, and I'm like, it sounds like it'd be pretty good, right? And he's like, just totally not into it. And I'm like, okay. An hour goes by and I get a text and he goes, "Scratch that. This movie is awesome." And I'm like, there we go.
I got the same
10 minutes after that, wait a sec, Clint Eastwood directed this movie? And I'm just like, dude, do you like not look these up at all? Like, I was totally like, this is where you should have been to start with. But it was just such a funny reaction where he's like, "This sucks. Wait a sec. No, this is awesome."
Yeah, he had reached out to me with a text and said, "Wow, I think I have it on the actual. Let me pull up the exact word frame for this of what he said."
I just
like you were so surprised it was a good movie.
Well, the first hour of the movie was bad. The last hour and a half was really good, but the first 45 minutes of the movie are terrible.
Interesting.
And it all spawns from one major decision from, I would assume, Clint, and it's the way the kids are cast.
Mm-hmm.
So did you notice that, like, he has it set up where, like, Jimmy, right, Sean Penn's character, has long black hair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But the kid that is Jimmy has short red hair.
Well, there is this thing called hair dye, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
But there's a kid
I
with
see your
black
point,
hair.
though. Yeah, I see your point. There
It
should
is.
be
It's a little.
similarity. Yeah.
I see what you did. So it's a little nitpick, but I get you.
And then their names, like, because it's not a nitpick, because they write their names in the cement, and you're like supposed to like remember. Okay, big ogre kid is Dave. Jimmy's the kid that with at that point in time short red hair, who's like the smart ass of the group, and then Sean has long black hair. But then when they become adults, they don't say their names again until you're introduced to Kevin Bacon's character on the bridge as a cop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you're not sure which
I
one's
get that.
which.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was a moment where I was confused too. And Austin, I don't mean to cut you off from your story,
Oh,
but
you're
real
good.
quick to follow up on that, I was actually confused too because they don't specify that there's a time jump in the beginning. So when Tim Robbins is walking his kid home from school, I'm like thinking that this is still the young Tim Robbins and that's his dad and not the old Tim Robbins. So yeah, I can see why it would be a little confusing just to get started off there when you're like, where are we and who's who? Yeah, I get that.
Okay. Now his
Okay.
exact text to me was, "Way to pick a moral Dossie, Austin."
A what?
It was
A
supposed
moral
to be
dossing?
doozy. You didn't have to bury me like that.
And that was exactly what you sent to me, so I was just
A doozy.
But you can see, like, I made the notes, like, which kid was which. Like, I was like, okay. Like, I rewinded. I'm like, okay, Jimmy has the long black hair. Wait, that's not Jimmy when he grows up. Like, that's messed up.
Right.
I guess maybe you're supposed to take on it from the attitudes of the characters when they're introduced. Like when Jimmy was the smaller one, like you said, when he was small and young, he still had that, like smart ass leader of the group attitude. And when you get to him later in the film, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Like that. So piggybacking off that is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Could you have used more time with the kids?
I don't think so. I think the way that they pulled it off, I think maybe, like you said, like you guys said, that they specified like a so many years later kind of thing, then it would have been great. As for the actual time with the kids, I don't think so. I think that Clint knew what he wanted to do, start the project right off with a bang, and then leave it up to mystery as to what happened, which I dig a lot. Especially like with the two like walking down the street after that. I think that's a really good idea to put it like not so much time with the kids.
Well, and it creates a beautiful motif at the end too with the what should have been the final scene of the two of Jimmy walking down the street at the end.
Yeah. And
Justin,
I would say
what'd
that
you think?
also to agree with that the screen time with kids is fine, but if you actually look at what the whole movie is about, it's not about their time as kids, really. It's about the murder, right, of Katie. That's what the whole movie's set around. So the thing with the kids at the beginning is more of a hook and not the actual story that we're following. So yeah, I would agree that it's done very well in the amount of split between time as adults and time with kids.
My counter argument to that is that, to me, like the jumps that Sean makes for Jimmy and Dave, how he just like shows up when he hears that his child has passed, that Jimmy's kid passed away. Like, I don't think I'd run to the door of like this kid I used to like play street hockey with when I was 5. Like, and we weren't friends through high school and stuff. Like, I could have used like, I guess, a bigger incident or like something that bonded them together more than just one of their friends getting taken away in a car. Like an extra scene with the kids to show how tight they were, to explain their actions as adults.
Well, actually, I think Kevin Bacon says, like, he's not really friends with those guys. Like when Jimmy shows up at the crime scene, he's like, oh, that's a guy that I used to know when I was a kid. Like I think it's pretty clear that they're not really close anymore. But I don't think I picked up on this at first. But Tim Robbins and Sean Penn's characters are actually related through marriage. So they would still be close as adults, because I don't know if they specified like if Sean Penn's new wife is Tim Robbins' sister or cousin or something, but they were actually related. Cousins, yeah.
Yep.
I totally missed that.
I didn't catch that until I was reading it. Yeah, I had to go back and I was like, oh, that makes sense now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at it, I think really Kevin Bacon's character is essentially the outsider here because he grew up to be a cop where originally now Tim Robbins' character and Sean Penn's character are now bonded through that. They may not talk as much. I mean, there's always that person from your family that you don't want to talk to, I'm assuming. And that's kind of what I picture here.
Justin,
Yo.
and I don't know how much this will stick out to Austin. And if it did, Austin, I apologize for just like cutting you out of this.
Cutting me out of it.
The random
Why are you even here, Austin? Why
Right.
are you here?
Exactly, right? Didn't suggest the movie or anything.
Yeah.
The random POV shot
Mm-hmm.
of Dave escaping the bunker, that bothered me because it never shows up again in the movie. I hate it when movies do that. When they just POV for no effing reason.
I would agree, and I think that also in the beginning of the film, during the whole opening with the abduction, there was actually a few editing choices that I was really like sort of jarred by. There were a bunch of jump cuts, like when they were playing hockey, they cut to a close-up of the goalie real quick for no reason, which I thought was weird. So the whole editing of that sequence, including the, once he escapes from being abducted, I thought it was hard. It didn't flow very well. And I thought that maybe they did that on purpose to keep the audience sort of jarred, just like the kids were maybe, feeling that. But it was a little, to me, uneven. And I get what you're saying, yeah.
I agree. I think the whole movie was poorly edited, to be 100% honest. I'm now looking up the editor's name. Joel Cox was the editor. He did Unforgiven, Flags of Our Fathers, Letters from Iwo Jima. Like, he's a good editor.
Yeah, those are all Clint's movies that he's directed, so he's probably the same guy he's used forever. Yeah.
Yeah. I just there were some editing choices in this movie that really bothered me. But I want to stick to the narrative of the camera here. Because in theory, we should not leave, like, once Katie's killed, the four characters that I'm okay being in a scene without one of the other main characters is the boyfriend, Jimmy, Sean, and Dave. But the narrative of the camera, and they're like quick hits. They're not even like 15 seconds, but they show like Dave's wife alone. They show Jimmy's wife alone. They show like, there was another one of the characters. Oh, Morpheus is alone at one point.
He has a name, it's Lawrence Fishburne.
He's Morpheus.
Morpheus.
That's it.
Yeah. The dude from The Matrix is in it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But like,
That's funny.
Why would they change the narrative of the camera to add what didn't really feel like important parts? And I feel like they took away time where they could have added a couple extra little scenes to help deliver some of the, particularly the Dave going crazy moments better. But instead they're like showing stuff to me that didn't matter.
I will absolutely agree to that. And then Austin, let me know if you felt this way too. But there were one of my biggest problems that I had with this movie, which I'll be honest, my overarching thing with Mystic River, I thought it was great. I'd say it was like 85% an awesome movie. And then there was like 15% that I didn't love the choices that they made. And one of them would be, there were things that happened that just took me completely out of what was going on, or that felt like a weird inserted choice. Like, I think the biggest example was the thing with Kevin Bacon's wife, who's like estranged, and he only talks to her.
Okay.
She calls and doesn't say anything. Those cutaways, even though they were nicely shot with like not really showing her, but it was so distracting and had no bearing at all on the story. And I'm like, they could have just completely cut those out.
It's actually one of like the first thing on my negatives list was I hated that whole angle. I didn't understand. Like, I felt like they did that to give his character purpose rather than being a cop. And it didn't jam with me. I was just like, I don't care about your estranged relationship right now. You're 100%. A cop trying to focus on this, and it's bothering the hell out of me.
Agreed. Yeah. And especially because as he was one of the main characters, but, I would say, I think they did that to give his character a little bit more, to humanize him a little bit and give him some more dimensionality than just, like you said, just being the cop. But he was the least of the three that we should have
I was
seen that
really
film. Like
interested.
Sean Penn and Tim Robbins are by far the most interesting and complex and layered characters. And Kevin Bacon did his job well in most of the scenes, and then those ones, I think they tried to do too much with him that they didn't really need to.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with all of that. Did you know that they serve Rolling Rock in Boston? Did anybody else pick that up?
I picked that up. I don't think they, yeah.
I don't think they do. That's a Western PA brewery.
You know, I've never been. Despite this advertisement, I've never actually been to Boston, so I have no idea.
Yeah, so when I saw that immediately took me out of the movie. And I did not register that was Katie on top of the bar. Did you guys?
Ooh, the bar
Yeah.
scene.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when she walked in, I thought they made it pretty clear that it was her and that it was her group of friends. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that.
All right. So the end of Act 1 kind of is finding Jimmy's daughter dead, Katie. Then we kind of like really starting to get into the crux of Jimmy's relationship with Sean and all that kind of stuff. And here's another editing decision that I hated. When they're in the station or at the corner or wherever they are, and Kevin Bacon hands Sean Penn the coffee. They're going back and forth, and then Sean Penn gets really upset and he bangs the table and the coffee spills. But they never show the coffee spilling. And this was something that they do the entire time is they never establish a shot with wide. Like they never show you the rooms they're in. It immediately is just like tight. So I think like the use of an establishing shot there would have helped because like realistically, we didn't even know there was coffee on the table. We know he gives him something, but because of the way the shots are framed, we don't even know. And then to not show the close up of like a hand and then the things, it just feels like basic filmmaking stuff that was like, no, we're making an artsy film. We don't need to show that. And that bothered me.
I don't know if I really noticed it in that scene. Like, I certainly thought it was weird. Like when he put the cup back, there was no sign of spilled coffee anywhere.
No,
but
no.
Yeah, I think the cutaway just would have been distracting in that point, because the focus is really on the emotionality and the dynamic between the characters. So I don't know if I see what you're saying for sure, but I don't know that it really bothered me. I mean, I don't think there were a ton of wide angle shots in the film or, wider shots. Probably they wanted to give it more of like, a claustrophobic sort of feel and, increase the tension, and you don't know who's exactly, where their minds are at and who you can trust and things like that. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't know if it really stuck out to me as much as a problem, but
Austin.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with him there. I'm not really much of an editor person, so I don't understand like shots.
It's okay.
But I would agree kind of. I feel like you're focused more on the emotion and triumph in this, and seeing that would kind of be a little bit distracting to me as a viewer.
In this scene, we kind of get, in my opinion, the three better actors in the movie in a scene together. And I feel like Sean Penn's just out acting everybody in this movie. And I think that's when I texted both of you, like, this is just a movie that is meant for Sean Penn to win an Oscar. Like, that's how it felt. Like, he got all these amazing monologues and like these beautiful moments where he's just acting his ass off. And then Kevin Bacon just looks like an old washed up like cokehead. And it kills me.
Yeah, agreed. I get that. I actually, what's funny though is I think that I like, as great as Sean Penn is in this movie, I think that the character that I was most drawn to was actually Tim Robbins. Like his performance I thought was so incredibly, because it was, Sean Penn sort of felt like, as that character, as sort of like the tough guy, the guy who'd done time, those sort of things, like the gang leader or whatever, that felt a lot more closer to who he probably might be in real life. And he played it great, but I feel like Tim Robbins' character was more of a stretch as just this like hollow shell of a guy who had his entire childhood and innocence and everything ripped away from him. And then 30 years later, what that type of being would still be like. And just like you could see in his face and in his eyes just how like empty and haunted and everything. And like you didn't really see all these crazy acts of, mental instability, but you could just see like this guy is just not right. And I found his character so much more interesting than Sean Penn, even though they both were fantastic and deserved both of their Oscars for sure. But Kevin Bacon, I thought, was just more of like a, even keeled, doing his role type of thing, but not nearly as impressive to me.
Austin?
I would say that Robbins and Penn are like real tied for first for the amount of just kind of feel they gave to me in this movie. I tell you what, I was more interested in, I want to find her name right here so I don't get it wrong, Marcia Gay Harden, Celeste. I found her character so much more interesting.
Which is Dave's wife.
Correct.
Okay.
So much more intriguing to watch rather than Kevin Bacon's character in this entire movie. It's amazing. It's strictly amazing the way that she plays this scared wife that really has no idea what's going on, and she's terrified to the point where she doesn't even want to go back to her own house.
I loved her performance. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
I thought Tim was really good as the shell of a human, but did not go far enough to let me know that he was like unstable at points.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked, particularly the scene where he's alone with his wife, and you can kind of see that light flick on. I would have liked almost a little bit more of that, because I was like, yes, finally, here we go. Dave's gonna snap. But like he wasn't like physically aggressive with her at all. Like he did not like get like big at all. He stayed like kind of like crumpled, which is maybe what they were going for. I think that I'm very much a visual, like I need to see like almost like, look here, look at the flags. This is happening now. And it was maybe too subtle for my taste, but I thought he was good. I did think he was good. Bacon was terrible though. Oh, was
terrible.
No,
I wouldn't say terrible. I would say he was exactly what the role required. Like he just felt like,
he was,
you know what's
they
actually
handed
funny?
him a script 2 weeks before and it said, "You're a cop, learn it."
Yeah. I don't know if you were joking or not, Austin, but they actually, so I don't know if you guys know this, Michael Keaton for a long time was going to play that role, and he was like hardcore into developing it with everything. And then I think it was a month or a couple weeks before shooting started, him and Clint Eastwood had this huge falling out, and he dropped off the movie, and they brought Kevin Bacon in last minute. So it was supposed to be
so
Keaton.
much more sense.
Yeah. Can you imagine? So
I was
anyway,
I was
it
just
was a real last
spitballing
minute
dates.
thing. So
Michael Keaton
loved
makes
to
that
see it.
movie so much better.
Oh yeah.
It would have been awesome.
It would have been like an acting duel at that point.
Yeah.
It felt like two really good actors with some nice supporting, and then Kevin Bacon's like, well, I'm on screen now, so just buckle up, kids.
Yeah. He's just along for the ride with those guys. But, that's why he didn't get a nomination and everyone else did. So, I don't want to bash him. I thought he was fine. And like Lawrence Fishburne, absolutely fine, playing a role playing, the way that he usually plays his roles. And they were very serviceable, and that was fine.
I thought his role was also really senile, if that makes sense. Like, they're showing him all these warning signs, and he hasn't known this dude for how long. He's like, he couldn't have done it. Let's move on to the next guy. No, you're a cop. Like, when the warning signs are presented to you, you act on them. That's the whole point of, being a cop. And to me, it acted like he had this emotional attachment to him, but he was like the least tied to him. It didn't make any sense to me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, until the end.
Yeah.
Where we find out that he covered up the murder of Just Larry? No.
Just Ray.
Just Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Just Ray. It's really at the 1 hour mark where I got into this movie. That's kind of like where we see Dave have that weird exchange with his wife. Then Dave's wife catches him lying to the cops because she's like upstairs, like looking out the window. Then she lies to the cops for him. There's like, that's where I'm like, okay, something, this might kind of work out here in the end. There seems to just like, through this part though too, like a lot of things take me out of it. Like Dave's weird flashback felt like a late add to the movie.
Which
you guys feel
flashback
that?
are you talking about?
So he has a flashback while he's telling. It's not even while he's telling his kid the story. He just has like a random flashback.
Oh yeah.
But he didn't have one when like he was walking his son like across the pavement where his name was. And he doesn't have another one for the rest of the movie. So it just kind of like took me out of it. Again, they don't show any kind of wide shot when the cops are interviewing Jimmy in the kitchen. Yeah, there's a lot here that kind of like is weird. And it feels like at this point we're starting to set up Dave as the murderer. And they almost add Just Ray just a little bit too late for me.
I will say this to add on that, and this is going back to the beginning, like overarching thoughts on this project. I will say that for me, that 15% that I was talking about that I didn't really care for, probably all of it came during the third act and the climax of the movie. Like, I felt completely unsatisfied with the ending of this movie. Like, you set it up the whole movie, like Tim Robbins is the murderer, right? And then he ends up not being the murderer, which is fine. But I felt like the way they did it with like it's Brendan's brother and his friend, that just felt like a total out of nowhere. Like nothing was leading up to that at all. It didn't really have any emotional like resonance or make sense. It just felt to me like they were setting it up that either Brendan or Tim Robbins were the murderers, which was great. And then there's that scene in the kitchen where it's like, oh no, it's my mute brother and his friend, because they didn't want me to go to Las Vegas. So they ended up killing my girlfriend. Like it just felt like it totally came out of nowhere and did not make sense. And that's probably maybe my biggest problem with the movie is just the way that it ended. I thought it did not reach the level that the preceding 2 hours had reached, as far as like creating the tension and the mystery, and it's like the twists and turns and who are we supposed to be following, and who could it be, and those sort of things. I was guessing the whole time. I truly thought it was either Brendan or Tim Robbins' character.
Same.
Right? And then I liked that it was different and not necessarily one of them, but I felt that the characters they pinned it on just did not make any sense at all.
Austin?
I'll agree with that to the point where I thought I agree with you with the motive. I didn't really understand it. And maybe that's because, he's been there for him this whole time with that emotional connection, that he didn't want his brother leaving him. Seems like a pretty stupid reason to kill somebody, but like they said, they never planned on killing her to begin with. They planned on scaring her, and in turn ended up accidentally killing her. So I will say though that I am a sucker for twists in movies. And while this entire time I was like, Tim Robbins did this, like his character did this, like this is crazy. And then we get the back and forth scenes between the dock and the kitchen. And I'm thinking, holy shit, he didn't kill her. Like this is, and it's like playing into the fact where you realize that no matter what, even though Jimmy says he's not going to kill him, Tim Robbins is dying as soon as he said or didn't say it. And meanwhile, we have the actual perpetrators that are being interrogated, so to speak, in the kitchen. It's that, I forget what kind of term, what English term it is, but something irony. I can't remember what's off the top of my head, but it's dramatic irony. Irony. That we know it, but the characters in the movie don't know it. And that to me is a big, big influence of why I enjoyed the ending to this, the sort of ending to this film, rather than the I want to say piss poor motive that he had.
So I want to dive in because Austin, you're 100% right that we know as the watchful, like third eye, like, party in the room that gets all the information, we know more than the characters, which is a form of storytelling, right?
Yeah.
So there's like 4 ways you can make a movie. That's one of them, is that the audience knows more than the characters. However, if you're telling that type of story, you can't show a fucking POV, because that immediately changes the tone and the narrative of the way you're making the movie. That's like, they literally broke a rule, and it felt like they broke a rule to try to add something to the movie instead of just following through like they should have. And it really bothered me. Also,
No.
you can know more, right? But like some movies, like you follow one character the whole way through or two characters the whole way through, right? Star Wars is that way, right? We're pretty much with Luke, Leia, and Han the entire time. Occasionally you're with Vader. But those are your four characters. You're not like in a weird cutscene with Chewie for no freaking reason. And they did that too much in this movie.
Okay.
And it bothered me deeply. So I just want to go back so these are my notes, like literally at 1 hour and 17 minutes in, they throw in a red herring with just Rey. Then the next scene, they show Dave have another psychopathic break, which kills any suspense that it's just Rey as the killer. The next scene, we find out that just Rey hasn't been seen in town for years. So like, I'm already like, okay, it's not just Rey. Like, they threw it out there and retracted it in the next scene. That's why I wanted Just Rey to be available in that first act to make, well, okay, there's three guys here. Because, like, they kind of, like, immediately said it's not the boyfriend, right? And the fact that it came around to be involved with the boyfriend is cool. But we were so heavy focused on Dave that it made the payoff feel, like, dumb. I think, like what you guys were saying.
Okay.
The whole thing with the Just Rey was really, it was awkward for me. Like they set the whole, probably the first half of the movie is set up in this very small world with these set characters and everything. And then all of a sudden they throw in this monkey wrench, which is like, oh yeah, this gun is from some random dude from 10 years ago who committed a robbery. And it's like, okay, I guess. And so he turns out to be Brendan's dad, but then it's the other brother that's connected to it. Like it felt like you were injecting other characters into a world that was already interesting enough as it was. And they should have just kept it sort of in that circle instead of reaching out and bringing in these other people that just, it was too thin, Yeah. I liked what they had set up. And I think, the whole Just Rey thing was very sort of awkward.
So now we're kind of like at the climax of the movie, the resolution here, or past the climax. We're at the resolution. We know that Dave killed somebody that night, but it was not Jimmy's daughter. Jimmy does not know that and ends up killing Dave. While Sean finds out that the actual murderer is the boyfriend's brother in a weird M. Night Shyamalan-esque twist where it's like, okay, sure. The aliens are allergic to water. But the best part of the movie for me is the final like back and forth with Kevin Bacon and Sean Penn, where Jimmy says, "Thank you for finding my daughter's killer, Sean. If only you would have been a little faster."
That was a great line.
That
was a great moment.
Got me.
That was awesome.
And I wish the movie would have ended right there.
Oh, we
But
agree
it didn't.
We agree on that.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Did it? And I don't know why. Why would you end with Jimmy walking down the street and then just fade to white? Or
Drunk
if you want your
Jack.
Boston, crane shot, fine. But the parade scene and like the scene with Jimmy and his wife where she like is like, "I'm so hot for you because you're a dirty, dirty man." Like it's just none of it made any sense.
Totally agree. Like I don't think they could have ended on that line because then it's too much of a downer and they need like a little bit of a buffer there at the end. But I like everything after that with the whole scene in the bedroom with him and his wife where she's like, "You're a king." And it's like, I'm like, where's this all coming from? Like for the whole movie, this guy was just like broken and trying to find his daughter's killer. And now she's trying to make him out like he's the next freaking Whitey Bulger or whatever. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then the parade thing definitely felt like extraneous. So yeah, that whole like last portion, I was like, this all is terrible and it's ruining.
There are some certain aspects that I agree. I, with Josh, wish that it would have ended at that scene. However, I will agree with the fact that the worst scene for me, and that was, like you said, the bedroom scene. I didn't get it at all. I thought it was really forced and stupid. But a great scene in the parade scene was when Jimmy's wife just stares down Dave's wife and lets her know that, yeah, my husband killed your husband. What of it?
Oh.
I don't know. I felt like
that was that. Yeah.
It was a very like tense, and she knew that. Like she was like scared shitless for the whole time she was looking at her, and just a blank face.
But here's the problem with that, and I love that shot, like in itself, like separately as just as a scene, you know. But here's the problem with her doing that stare down and being like, you know, like you said, letting her know sort of just by a look that, you know, we got rid of your husband. You know, Dave was innocent, so it just makes her seem like not a bitch, but just like I don't know, for her to be like, yeah, we killed your innocent husband. Like it just completely takes the movie in a different direction again, where it's like, why are you guys trying to all of a sudden be these hardcore gangsters or whatever? You know, it's like, this is just not what the rest of the movie was. You know, It's like you went from this murder mystery to now all of a sudden, like, we're the crime family, like, you're not going to mess with us, we do what we want type of thing. And it just felt like, as much as I love that stare down, like you said, it just felt like it was belonged in a different movie, you know, like if it was in The Departed or The Town or, you know, whatever, more of an actual crime movie, which this was not really. I mean, there's a crime in the center of this movie, but it's a murder mystery. It's more of a noir, you know, you're trying to figure out what happened. It's not like an organized crime movie, and that would have felt more in place in a movie like that, I think.
I thought it was, I'll agree with that. I think that it was interesting, though, how Jimmy's wife is painted out to be this very sympathetic character for the fact, you know, they lost their daughter and everything, and then all of a sudden she's not. Like, she has obviously seen some tough times, you know, with Jimmy's previous wife passing, and now she knows what she's getting into. So maybe they planted that to be her character kind of all along in the end.
Right.
I don't know.
Which I love. Which I
thought it was
love.
very interesting.
They also think that they didn't, at least I didn't pick up on this. Did they hint that to you at all, like at any other point in time in the movie? This is actually like a woman who's more.
No, Jimmy's wife is like afraid of him the whole time.
Yeah, like I didn't get that at all really until like a little bit of that weird bedroom scene.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like I love the idea of it, and it just felt so out of place because we hadn't seen any of that before in the entire movie. Like there was a moment where Sean Penn's wife, you know, Jimmy's wife, had come in and really like taken charge, or at least, you know, said a line or done something to be like, okay, she's not just your standard, you know, supporting housewife or whatever.
Right.
You know, that would have been a bigger payoff at the end, because it's like, well, I do see those moments where she was kind of, you know, the strength of this family and, you know, the one behind it all or whatever, the driving force. But it just, because it came out of nowhere, I think that's why it didn't connect for me. But I get, like, again, I agree with you in that I like the idea of it for sure, but it just felt weird.
Gotcha.
Okay. So let's just kind of buzz through these questions real quick, and just like maybe something you didn't mention through the discussion. What did you like about the movie? Like, give me one thing that you were like, yes, that's great.
Austin, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I like the fact of how the location made it a very dreary drama, so to speak.
I hated the location. I hated that it was Boston.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, this is supposed to be a very dark film. I don't know if you see sunlight once in this entire film.
No, you really, well, at the end, you're right. It's just at the end.
Everything is sunshine and rainbows for everybody, though, right?
Right, you're right.
Like the whole climate and weather aspect to it was really nice. I really enjoyed, like, just the overall, like I said, the back and forth between the dock scene and the kitchen scene. I love how some characters were treated very, very well in this movie, and others you're like, why is he in there again? You know, it's a weird aspect to it, but I kind of dug it.
Okay.
Overall, like I said, I thought it was a really good movie.
Yeah.
Justin?
Some of the things that I liked the most, I loved the tone of the movie, and that goes a little bit to what Austin was saying about the setting. Like, if you think Clint Eastwood is very known for, all of his movies are very desaturated, and you'll see it a lot in like J. Edgar or $1 Million Baby or Richard Jewell even, but they're very desaturated even when it is daylight. So it's very flat lighting. I shouldn't say flat lighting, but the color palette's very flat. And I think that ties into the dreariness of it, especially Boston, which is very working class, town. And there's a lot of people that I still think associate Boston with being sort of a rough and tumble sort of place. So it makes for a good setting for like a murder mystery or a crime movie or whatever you have. But I really loved the tone of the movie, and I thought they did a great job with keeping you guessing and the suspense of it all. Like, honestly, like, I thought, for a while, I'm like, is it Tim Robbins? It's too obvious to be Tim Robbins. Oh, wait, it is Tim Robbins. Oh, wait, it's this fucking Brendan kid. Like, that was my train of thought. And, and it totally was wrong. So, I thought the story did a great job with making sure that they led you down certain paths and then took you down another path, and not really being obvious at all about it. And I love I love the complexity of the characters and the dynamics that some of them had, like, I think one of my favorite scenes in the movie is where you have Sean Penn and Tim Robbins' characters are just sitting on his porch after the not the wake, but the gathering of family or whatever, and they're just sitting there, and it's so emotionally heavy, even though there's not a ton of dialogue. And Sean Penn, who's just such a strong, tough character, he's just so overcome with grief. He's like, I can't even cry for my daughter, and Tim Robbins is just there, as lost and empty as he is, he's still kind of just there supporting him. And it was just, I thought that was a really, really powerful, interesting scene to have those dynamics. And, it was obviously just two guys sitting on a porch, but there's so much that happens between them and between their characters. There's a lot of layers to it. And that was one of my favorite ones because of that. So I thought the characters were very interesting. I thought most of the plot of the story was really great. So aside from a little bit at the end, I mean, I really enjoyed, the direction that they took it for most of the part.
Hey, Justin, come closer. Come closer.
Oh, Jesus.
Do you know why you like that scene? Because they're one of the only ones that used a fucking wide shot.
Oh my God, with the wide shot again.
I
don't have a problem with the wide shot thing at all. I got no problem with that. I didn't notice it at all. I felt like everything was established.
Scenes have a rhythm.
Yeah.
And without a wide shot, it's like playing on a drum without a bass drum. Like, there's no, just steady. There was never rhythm.
A moment in this movie where I was confused about where we were. Austin, was there ever a moment where you're like, wait a sec, where are we, in someone's kitchen or are we in a warehouse? Like,
it has nothing to do with that
at all.
Nope, not at all.
Oh, you guys suck. My favorite part of this movie, yeah. And unfortunately, the DP was not listed on IMDb, is the lighting. The lighting was subtle, but in the moments where the characters needed it was brilliant. In the points where Jimmy needed to look vulnerable, he was washed out. When Dave was kind of going through that transition, when he was normal, he was lit well, right? And then he would turn into the shadows when he would snap into his little psychotic break. I thought the lighting in the major scenes was brilliant. I think it was old school in that sense.
I will say my favorite shot of the entire movie is at about the 1 hour mark when he's telling his kid the bedtime story that you were talking about earlier. Ooh. And he's sitting on the kid's bed, and it's a profile shot. So you're coming at him like this, and it's completely black everywhere except this one key light outside the window just on this side of his face. But it's all perfectly black around that. Yeah. There's no other fill and no details at all. I thought that was fucking beautiful. That was amazing. That was my favorite shot, hands down. Hands down.
What didn't you like about the movie?
What didn't
Austin? Yeah.
I hated read my really poorly written notes here. I hated the obvious convenience of looking back at the 911 call.
Oh,
so much in this movie.
I thought you would have liked that. You're a twist guy.
No, because
I love that. Okay,
it's the fact that, oh yeah, we got nothing. We're gonna go out for burgers. It's like, oh, did you listen to this 911? Oh, you listen to it. Oh, let's just play it. Are you kidding me? Then they figured it out automatically. Oh my God. The most frustrating thing in this entire movie, because we do that sometimes. We're like, oh, well, let's just do this. You don't do it in this. You don't build something to this point to at the last second being like, oh, let's just listen to this then. And then they get it. Give me a break. I hated every part of that.
Every part. Oh, man, that's harsh.
Oh, every part of that, listening to that 911, because it's a cliche. It's like, we don't know how to get to the next scene. Let's throw this in there.
Mm-hmm.
I hated that.
And Austin, you know what? I also have a bad transition. When Kevin Bacon and Morpheus come out of the coffee shop for no effing reason and complain about the price of the coffee as Morpheus. He was wearing
when
the
you
glasses.
say Morpheus, I think Keanu Reeves is going to be in it at some point.
He was wearing sunglasses and like seemed to know more than everybody else. He was Morpheus.
Is this?
And in theory, because of the Matrix, it could have actually been Morpheus. They could be in the same universe. You don't know.
I think this was just a sequel to the Matrix, and we didn't realize it until now. That's the greatest trick that they ever pulled. That's
You're
why
welcome.
Everyone was like, "Wow, best
You're
picture."
all welcome.
You know what's funny though? I can't believe you hated the 911 call so much, because I truly felt like that was another one of my favorite scenes, and not because I understand the convenience of it. Totally is a little bit of a cop out, but for me, the fucking call itself was so great, because not only had they played it at the very beginning of the movie, then you come back to it a second time in that scene, and I still did not pick up on that detail until that moment where he goes, "Play it again," which it's kind of cliche, sure, but like I had not picked up on that, and I'm like, oh shit, there's the tiny detail that I missed twice, you know, from the beginning and from now, and then it clicked into place. And you know what? Actually, I thought after I heard that, I'm like, oh, so it's a young guy, and it might not be Brendan. I actually thought it might be his mute brother speaking at that point, because I'm like, who better to make the 911 call than the kid who can't speak? You know?
Yeah, because they were going back and forth and saying, like, in the kitchen scene, they were like, "I know you can speak."
Right.
Like,
so I was surprised when he didn't. I thought that he was gonna like be like, "Oh yeah, I've been able to speak the whole time." But no, I love the 911 call just because I was like, wow, I can't believe I missed that twice, you know, and the subtlety of it, but the gravity of it, the importance of it, I loved that. So
yeah, I agree. Justin, what didn't you like in this movie?
I mean, besides the unsatisfying ending of having it be those two kids who were like not completely connected to the story in any way, that definitely felt like I just felt like the whole rest of the movie was so intricate and so well done that felt like it was out of left field, and I was very unsatisfied with that. The bedroom scene and the parade at the end. So, I mean, like the last 15 minutes were probably just, I didn't like them nearly as much as I liked the rest of the movie. But there were those uneven beats, like having Kevin Bacon's wife, you know, the cutaways to her and some of the POV shots that were so very distracting, and felt like we could have it just felt like, if you watch a David Fincher movie, like, you know, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or whatever, it's so constantly the same the whole way through, in that it's like the tone is always there, and like what he's trying to convey is just so perfectly done, where this felt like there were, you know, it felt like one of those heartbeat monitors. It's like you're going and going and then random jump, and then you're going and then random jump, you know. It's like I felt like there could have been a little more consistency throughout, I guess. And not that Clint Eastwood's not a great director, because he's made a ton of movies and a lot of them are really good, but yeah, there were choices in this one that I thought were a little weird. I don't know if you guys know this. This was actually the first movie that Clint Eastwood did the score for, and he's done that for probably 8 or 9 movies since, but this is his first one that he actually composed the music for. And I don't know if this is a self-fulfilling prophecy or not, but like after I read that portion of the way through the movie, I started listening for the music a bit more, and I found that I didn't quite like it. It felt like at times it was where it needed to be, and at other times it was completely like over the top and uncalled for, and it removed me a little bit. There were moments in not only the score, but in the writing and the acting that I felt like were over the top in certain ways. Like there were certain scenes where I felt like Marcia Gay Harden was just taking it a little too far with her, like, you know, type of thing. Or like there were certain lines of dialogue where I'm like, okay, that's like a little cheesy, you know? So it felt like there were little beats here and there that were a little over the top, you know, in different parts of it. But did you guys notice the music at all? I was curious if that.
Now that you've brought it up, I remembered thinking like, oh wait, I didn't even realize there was a score in this movie.
Yeah,
until like it happened. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is
very quiet.
going on.
And you know what's, and I also think that the best parts of the movie are all the quiet ones. It's like, this is such a tense movie that it's like, it could have, I think it should have had no music at all, and I would have loved it. But I don't know if you guys agree.
But yeah, like I said, I didn't even know there was a score in it. But there were, like you said, there were scenes where the music was just a little weird. And to me, like you said, very tense movie, very drama influenced movie. So really having no music at all probably would have been the better choice in my own honest opinion.
I'm trying to see what movie, like, where does this fall in him as a director?
Oh, it's like right in the middle. Actually,
it's right in the middle.
You know what? Yeah, because he started. I thought the same thing too. Because I know he directed a lot, but I didn't know when he started. And he started back in the 70s, like 71, 72, and he's been going through today. So yeah, it's more in the middle. But like, I don't know if it's his best. It's certainly, and it's interesting because in his filmography, it was like this and then $1 Million Baby back to back. So they were like, very noir adjacent type of, very heavy, dark sort of movies. But
$1 Million Baby's perfect. Like, that's a great movie.
Yeah, that's one of his better ones for sure. I mean, but he had done Unforgiven a decade before this, and that was
Sudden Impact.
That one Best Picture. Yeah, so he's it's very much in the middle of his pantheon, I guess you could say.
Granted, Torino being just a few years down the road. My favorite of the Tarantino or the Clint Eastwood directing efforts. Cool. Let's go back to these questions.
Sure, but what did you not like about it?
Man, I feel like I just trashed on the movie most of this conversation.
What did you like then?
The last thing I did not like is the camera's movement. So it felt like the camera would be stationary for 90% of the scene, and then it would push in, it wasn't even a push, it was a dolly. It was a full move. A full move in, and it felt just totally like, oh, look, here comes the big moment. And I'm like, stop pandering to me. I don't need that. Like, the actors are doing a great job. You do not need to help them with this camera move.
Mm.
So that was, it was very Hitchcock-esque, but was used almost every scene at the critical point in the scene instead of using it in big reveals like Hitchcock does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Best also, actor. Wait a sec. Hold on a sec. Wait a sec. Let's go back to the ending for a second here, because I totally forgot about this till now. So what happens is that the mute brother and his friend get a hold of the dad's gun.
Yeah.
And they're out in the street. They're out in the street playing with it, and it accidentally goes off when Emmy Rossum is drunk, and it like goes through a window and scares her. Then she gets out, and they chase after her because they don't want her to tell. And then we go from that to cut to she's dead. Like, they beat her with a hockey stick and then shot her again in the back of the head. Like, that. Did anyone else feel like, what are we talking about? Like, who are these kids again? And how did we get to scared kids with a gun to beating to death with a hockey stick and shooting at point blank range in the head? Like,
I agree.
Again, that's part of why the ending was just like, what?
I'd have thought maybe originally that, like, Tim Robbins' character had killed the person who killed Katie.
I thought that at one point, yes.
And I was like, cool, I'm into this. And then, like, yeah, because you just feel like two kids couldn't do that to somebody that's like, Katie's 19 and the boys are like 14, 15 at oldest.
Mm.
Like, I know there's two of them, but that does not feel like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like that's realistic. It feels like a 19-year-old would be able to outsmart or outmaneuver two 15-year-old boys.
Well, did it specify if she was like drunk or not?
Oh, I think she definitely
drunk.
Was, yeah.
Still.
It adds, I get you. Like, it's a little strange.
Plus, and the motivation was just the mute kid didn't want his brother to go to Vegas, so he killed him.
The motive is,
So, like, were they gonna scare her off? Like, leave my brother? I don't know.
I think that's what they were going for in it.
Because, like, the conversation with the old woman is like, not to cut you. I'm sorry, Austin. but it's like the assailants say hi, like there's like a pleasant exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So like instead of having Dave flashback to escaping as the bunker, or Dave flashback to beating up the pedophiles, like maybe we should have flashed back to that scene at some point, right? So that we could at least see how it happened, instead of like that just being left to a total mystery. And
Totally.
Yep.
I think that's something Zodiac does really well, in that it shows like the actual murders, even though it doesn't show the killer at all, but it like gives you a sense of, what kind of what happened and everything. Not to go back to David Fincher, because I do love Fincher.
It's hard not to. Best actor, Sean Penn, or do we want to give Tim Robbins?
I'm going Tim Robbins.
I can see
Tim
it.
Robbins all day. I'm going Tim Robbins all day. I respect Sean Penn and certainly think he deserved it for this performance, but I was much more intrigued by Tim Robbins' character.
Okay.
I got Sean Penn for my vote, so.
Yeah. Worst actor. He should have stuck to the desert, jumping on top of cars, avoiding tremors, because he was much better in that movie than he was in this one.
Yep. Kevin Bacon is the worst actor in this film by far.
Oh man, you guys are really hating on Kevin Bacon. Like he's totally like a bland actor, but I thought he was fine. Like this movie, he was exactly what he should have been.
I think it's my affection for Kevin Bacon in other Kevin Bacon movies that he was just not good in this. And it's like, well, why did you even bring Kevin Bacon in? Like, leave the man alone.
Because Michael Keaton dropped out. That's why. He's the last resort.
Go get somebody else.
Keaton's
Don't
fault.
get Keaton.
It's Keaton's fault.
Fucking Michael Keaton.
I personally believe that since there are these three kids that were tied together, that he was going to have more of an impact player perspective with it. And instead, he just turned out to be a cop character. And that's where it blew it for me.
And then we find out he's like a dirty cop.
Yeah.
Randomly.
I don't know if dirty is the right word, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, and it's the character I understand, because like he's the one who got out, of the life, and he, sort of made something, even though he's like, still in Boston. He's on the other side of the river now. He's got a good job and all that stuff. So he made it out, right? So he doesn't have the connection. But I think there could have been, or maybe there was the expectation that there would be a scene of like, a big confrontation between one or two or three of them, where it's like, you turned your back on us and left us here, or like, big explosive emotional type of thing. So yeah, I guess I am kind of disappointed that didn't happen, but I don't like notice Kevin Bacon in a bad way. Honestly, like Austin, you're gonna hate me for this. I thought Marcia Gay Harden was just like completely way over the top in all her scenes. They were just like, at first it was good, and she was just like scared and didn't know what was going on, and then it just slowly like snowballed, where she was just getting so hysterical and freaked out, and it felt like to me it was a little bit overacting.
She didn't bother me until the parade scene, which shouldn't even have been in the movie. So I'll give her a pass.
Yeah. And she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress.
Yes, she was.
So I'm not gonna take that away from her. But yeah, I was like, I don't know about this.
What was your worst scene?
Hands down, the bedroom scene. I thought it was stupid.
Okay.
There was no point to it at all.
Yeah. That's probably it. Yeah, I mean, I have to say that is up there. And also the kitchen scene, the confrontation between Brendan and his brother and his friend, only because it was so disappointing, the outcome of that.
Yeah.
And that it's, who it was revealed to be. But also, as far as like, just this scene just doesn't need to be here at all. It's definitely the bedroom scene,
Mine was the kids. Oh, Justin, we lost you. There you are.
I was there.
It was the kids at the beginning, I think, was so bad. It totally threw me off. It literally left me confused for the first hour of the movie. That really, it was supposed to be like the setting. Literally, it is okay, here's the table. Here's what we're working with. And I was like, hell if I know. Because I couldn't keep the kids straight.
Yeah, I didn't love it. Like, I liked the idea of it and what it's supposed to be, but that was a scene where I didn't think the writing was all that strong. And I like Brian Helgeland. Like, he's done great movies like Legend and 42, and he didn't write did he write A Knight's Tale? Yeah, I think he wrote and directed A Knight's Tale. Oh, Josh, the Drop. I don't know if you've ever seen The Drop. He wrote that movie, which you would probably like a lot. But
I mean, I love A Knight's Tale.
But yeah, I just thought the writing and the editing of the opening scene wasn't as powerful as it could have been, as far as like this kid just got abducted and sexually abused for 4 days. Like, I think it could have hit harder.
And then what was your favorite scene?
Justin, you go ahead for this one.
I think I already said it was Tim Robbins and Sean Penn on the porch.
Right.
But also, I mean, there were, and then that one was definitely really interesting just to see the characters, how they were interacting, and especially because it's one of the few moments where Sean Penn is really, really struggling emotionally, and he's just trying to cry but trying to hold it in, and that was a really interesting. That was probably my favorite moment for his character. And then the tape recorder scene I really liked when it's like, oh wait, they said her. How did they know it was her if they found, the car was empty? I like that a lot. And then I think another one was when Tim Robbins, when he's being interrogated, I thought that was a cool scene because there was a little bit of a weird like power dynamic shift. It's like,
right.
He's like, hey, Kevin Bacon, can you go get me a Sprite? Thanks, man. And then he turns to get him and he's like, how about a meatball sub too, you fucking bitch? Or, whatever he said. And I'm just like, whoa, he's really like, all of a sudden turning the tables and trying to be a tough guy, and he outsmarted them when he knew about the insurance on the car that was picked up and everything. So that was a really interesting scene just because it's like, okay, Tim Robbins is actually like, he's kind of still there and like he can still kind of be in control and flip the tables. I don't know if it happened again in the movie at all.
No, because then he like a scene later gets into the car with the gangsters when he should have known better.
Yeah, so I think that was the only scene where he really like had some balls, but it was I liked it. It was a nice way to turn the tables.
Right.
Austin?
I've touched upon it already. You said the kids in the kitchen was the worst scene, but I think the best scene was the going back and forth between those two. Like that irony that we know and they don't know, and he's about to do something stupid. My runner-up would probably have to be when...
Hi, Anastasia.
Hi, Stash. I think my runner-up would have to be when Celeste comes home from the downpour in the car, and he's talking to her about vampires and werewolves and just making no sense and just being that overly crazy character we're led to believe is the one that committed this crime. I think that scene was really powerful.
My favorite was the end with Sean Penn and Kevin Bacon. That line, thanks for finding my daughter's killer, Sean. If only you would have been a little bit faster, was just...
Yeah. I was
like,
perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great.
That's
fantastic.
And then the last question last two questions is, so we kind of all established who our least favorites were, right? So who are you going to replace them with? I can go first if you guys need time to think.
I got mine, but if you want to go first, that's fine.
So I want Kevin Bacon to be replaced by Michael Rappaport.
Michael Rappaport, interesting.
Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
he's of that same age, right? Which is important. But his ability to play a deep character that's conflicted with things, I feel like he's not given enough credit. In Atypical, he's my favorite actor in that show. And he plays a similar where like he's just a good guy who's just trying to do the right thing and like keeps getting caught up in stuff. I love him in that. And as I was watching that, plus he's always cast as a cop or something anyway. So I was like, okay, cool. This all works.
Okay. Was he from Boston?
Yes.
I've heard him do a Boston accent before. Oh yeah. So there you go. He would fit into that. Yeah.
Can't beat that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let you go last, Austin, because mine's very brief. I think, like I said, my least favorite actress was Marcia Gay Harden in this role, but I don't think that I would replace her with anyone specifically because the role itself doesn't have a ton of meat to it. Like it's, very much a wife in distress, which was an archetype that was pretty heavy back in those days and is still kind of like transitioning out, just like a grieving wife who doesn't do much except like, worry about her husband and ask him like, where were you or what's going on or what's happening or whatever like that. So I don't think there's a role that any one person could have played, but I certainly would have cast her differently in that role.
I would have replaced Kevin Bacon's character with Jake Gyllenhaal. Straight up.
Where was Jake Gyllenhaal in his career at that point? Was that before Donnie Darko? He was still pretty young, I think.
He's too young.
I think he's still kind of young.
I mean, I get it because he basically took after Sean Penn kind of aged out of that role, he kind of took all those roles. But I think he's too young.
I think he builds more. I think he builds more dynamic though to the character than Kevin Bacon brought.
I'm not arguing that he wouldn't have been a better choice as an actor. He's a great actor. I just think 2003, he's too young.
He definitely would have been great. I don't know if you guys ever saw a movie called Prisoners, but he played a cop in that one. That was also another sort of mystery suspense thriller about an abduction. And he plays like the cop who's very, very complex and layered and badass. And he plays opposite Hugh Jackman. So that
sounds better than this movie.
Prisoners is a fucking masterclass in suspense. It's amazing. You need to watch Prisoners, by the way. It's directed by Denis Villeneuve, who directed Sicario and the latest Blade Runner. But anyway, it's amazing. And Arrival. Prisoners, and Jake Gyllenhaal in that is the role that he would have been if he had been Kevin Bacon.
Yep.
Because he's just like.
It's funny that you. It's funny that you say that because I have Prisoners on DVD, and I just got it from my girlfriend because she was searching through old films and everything, and watched it, and that's why I picked Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah.
Oh,
he's so good in that movie. He's so good in that movie. Yeah.
It's a good movie.
Unbelievable. Yeah. If anyone's watching this and they liked Mystic River, highly, highly, highly recommend Prisoners if you have not seen it. It's beautifully shot. It's incredibly crafted. I mean, it's a little long. It's like 220 or so, just like Mystic River was, but it's just a phenomenal masterclass in tension and suspense, and everyone should watch it. It's incredible.
Or just watch The Departed.
The Departed with Jack Nicholson. So much Boston, so many accents in that movie.
All right, give me 1 out of 10. 10 being the best, 1 being the worst.
8.
8. Austin?
8.5. 8.5.
Yeah, I'd go. I had mine as an 8.5 for this.
I have a 7. I still, after talking with you guys, I stand by my statement that this is a crappy Departed. And Departed isn't that good, but I love it.
You know what? I'm taking a full point off because Michael Keaton wasn't in the movie. I'm going down to a 7.5.
Exactly.
If Michael Keaton had been cast in the movie, it's a 10 all around. That's actually the thing I'm most distressed about, finding that out. So close.
Well, that wraps up the very first. We still don't know the name of this yet, but I think it went well. We'll.
This was great.
Figure out,
a lot of fun.
We'll figure out another movie.
Thank you guys for doing this. Yeah, thank you for inviting me into this. This was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll be back next week with another bad cop movie that's not The Departed.
Not The Departed.